Exactly. You see, that's what that Article 117 is saying. That it does not absolve you from criminal liability.
Right.
If the actions
can be imputed to
yes, if the actions
it can be traced back to you.
Can be traced back to you, and if the actions themselves are criminal in
nature.
Yeah. If they are prohibited by law, you cannot say that because we did them collectively, therefore I'm innocent. No.
Right.
And I think that the spirit of Article 117 is really a political thing. You know, it's just
not to run away,
but to make them be able to collectively make decision. But I think it does not exclude them from any criminal.
Yeah, you see, how normally that matter is cited is to say that, for example, if government has agreed about something, you're not supposed to get out and say, me, I don't agree.
Right.
Yes. So that's the only time I think that matter is used.
So you cannot, but we might get a situation where people begin to defy the president's orders.
Exactly. You see, that's what that article is.
Well, nobody is obliged to respect unlawful orders. If the president issues unlawful orders,
like the central bank governor said, he did not agree with the president asking for money to go and buy jets, but he gave him the money. So he could have refused. He could have said no.
He could have if he thought that the actions were illegal.
Yeah,
because you have
buying jets. Yeah, you see, buying jets is not illegal.
Yes,
and therefore you cannot impute criminal liability on him.
Yes,
but he would call it criminal in another sense.
Yes,
in this kind of poverty we are wallowing in, spending that kind of money.
You have given us subjective
things. I mean, it is indefensible. You can't defend that kind of thing.
But also that money to be withdrawn from the central government, from the central
there is
bank.
a procedure.
There's a procedure laid out by the law. It requires approval of parliament. It requires appropriation by either a resolution or an act of parliament.
Yes.
And if by any chance that allegation is true, that will then mean that it was done in contravention of the law and set out procedures, and that is unlawful.
Yeah, you don't enter into the consolidated fund. It's like a home granary.
Right. You don't wake up in the night because you're the father.
Exactly. There are rules at home.
And when they switch on the light,
all over. You find you tiptoeing to the granary.
Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, what are the implications of today's constitutional court ruling on the immunity of political appointees? What lessons can our political leaders take from this ruling? So, Mr. Opiyo, you think we should get some people defying the president's orders?
I'm not inciting anyone to defy the president's order, but I believe in the law, the rule of law, not the law of rule, that any person is under no obligation to obey any unlawful orders from anybody. If you think that an order has been issued to you, whether you're a police officer or a traffic man, if General Kaura issues a statement that you think is unlawful, tell him, Afande, look at the law, I think that's unlawful.
Right.
You will be protected by the law.
Right.
You might suffer short consequences.
I did a transfer.
Yeah, a transfer to Karamoja, but I think that you will perfectly be defending the Constitution of Uganda, and Article 17 of the Constitution gives powers to defend this Constitution in the hands of every Ugandan. So if anybody issues any order,
say no.
That you think is unlawful,
read my lips.
Bring it to their attention and say, I think that order is unlawful.
Yeah, and these the humorous cases we have been taken to court. We have been trying to join actors, state actors like the head of the police, the head of the army, the intelligence, and so on and so forth. But the courts have been very unsure of whether these people should be joined. The courts think that these people have been acting in their capacities as officials, and therefore they should not be liable personally for having carried out these orders or the actions. So this judgment, I'm not saying that it will help us very much, but to some extent we shall use it whenever a civil court does not want to join in personal liability the state actors in some of these human rights abuses. we shall use this judgment, and eventually the court will realize, we develop our law by jurisprudence, judicial dicta like that.
Explain that briefly.
Judicial dictum, I mean the words of the judges are a kind of law, because
they expound on the written law.
Exactly. So now this is a development, a very important development for us, because here in the High Court, especially the Civil Division, the courts have been very stingy. They're finding it very hard.
I'll give an example.
Stingy, explain that to us. They've been stingy and they've been too strict on the written law. Now this judgment is expounding it. It's giving you more leeway.
In more leeway to find the liability of state actors in some of these human rights abuses.
So you think it's a landmark case?
It is a landmark case.
I'll give an example how the kind of decisions of courts develop law, eventually.
Yes.
After the 1995 Constitution was promulgated, the courts were reluctant to apply international legal instruments, claiming that
the Constitution
to apply international human rights instruments, to which Uganda is a party, claiming that they do not form part of our Constitution. And in several court decisions from 1995 up to about 2001, cases were dismissed because they argued that the Constitution does not provide, allow them to apply those instruments. But progressively, the Constitutional Court has actually ruled on that and said, look, the National Human Rights Instrument, to which Uganda is a party, and Article 287 are part and parcel of our Constitution. That has now become law. So you see the courts now progressing.
It's not written down anywhere.
It's not.
But it's not.
We call it what?
Dictum.
So progressively the courts have decided cases on the basis of the International Human Rights Instrument. The popular ones include the case of Charles Nyangobana and Dumwenda on Article 50, on Section 50 of the Penal Code Act, the death penalty case. So the courts have progressively actually applied this principle. So I think the ruling of this court, in as far as the responsibility, individual of a person acting in that office, is important, and I think that the courts must pick up from there and rid this country of public servants who think they can hide under the cloak of vicarious vicarious liability to commit crime.
Impunity.
So this dictum is a little bit like the British Constitution, the famously quoted unwritten British Constitution, which still applies nonetheless.
Yes.
There are British laws, they don't have
because and also I think it's important to point out that in looking out for what laws are in the country, there are different sources of law, and I think decisions of the courts are also
read from
law.
The decisions of the court are also law.
Source of law.
Source of law.
What is just the dictum? Okay, Mr. Rwakafuzi, the president said there's no case, but maybe before we come to that, how long do you think this is likely to take?
The trial?
Yeah.
We don't know, because there could be an appeal, for example.
3 years.
There could be an appeal,
He could appeal the Constitutional Court ruling?
Yes, he could. But
appeal to the Supreme Court?
To the Supreme Court.
Which is the highest court?
Now, when he appeals to the Supreme Court, there is a problem. The Supreme Court is not constituted as we speak now. We need 7 judges. We need 7 judges to hear his appeal.
And I can tell you it's even more worrying given the fact that the Service Commission, which is supposed to appoint judicial officers,
the Judicial Service Commission
is not there.
Is not
the Judicial Service Commission.
So in other words, if he appeals, this will stagnate the trial the more.
It could take 3 years.
Not necessarily, because I think by the close of the year we might have.
I think it would require John Ken Chamuza to get another judge on the Supreme Court.
We might have a quorum by the end of the year.
But because it's the president who appoints judges to that.
Yes, but you see, he cannot appoint them. He cannot appoint them
unless there's a Judicial Service Commission.
Unless there's a Judicial Service Commission, he's the one supposed to appoint the members.
In fact, he appoints them on the recommendation of the Service Commission.
Yes.
So first,
in the absence of the Service Commission, there can't be a recommendation.
So he's supposed to first of all appoint a JSC, Judicial Service Commission.
Yes.
Which recommends, gives him names, which he approves. It's a process that could take months. But that is in case Professor Kenya appeals to it.
Exactly. I see him appealing. You see, because it does some magic in a sense that the case keeps out of the public.
And I can tell you why, Edmond. Many of us who first saw Bukenya mimicking President Museveni, trying to speak like him,
even walk
with the heart.
Walk like him. We thought that he was looking really, really for lack of a better word, looking comic, looking silly. The Professor Bukenya isn't a silly person. He has got his game plan right up his sleeves. And I can tell you why. Bukenya gets into court, he appoints FDC-leaning lawyers. He goes to court, and what does he ask for? President's letters and minutes of cabinet meetings. So he knows his game.
Knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing. And I think that many of us were dismissing Professor Bukenya as
comic.
As a comic fellow, as a guy who is not political. I think we are missing the point. Read him very carefully. His moves are calculated.
Some people think you appoint a lawyer who thinks like you, so he appoints an opposition lawyer. I really do not. Mr. Rwakafuzi, before we go forward to hear from the listeners, I was saying earlier, President Museveni said he thinks there's no case. His word is heavy because he's a sitting president as we speak.
Yes.
What will this? What kind of independence of the courts can you expect?
We have already seen it. We have already seen it. When this judgment does not allude at all to the president's comments.
It's already discounted.
Yeah, it's already discounted.
Right.
Yes, and actually, but you see, the president has never respected his own institutions.
Go on.
But people who have the courage can continue acting under the powers conferred upon them by the law under which they act, the judges, the civil servants. But you see, some people lack the courage. When they hear the president speak,
they begin to shake,
yes.
And they stop thinking.
Yes, but
when they go home, they go to bed early.
Exactly. But I believe our judiciary is made up of strong minds. My only worry is when my classmate and friend Raphael Baku, if he will have the courage, because he is also a politician anyway, so he may. Yeah, I mean,
never stood for an elective office.
He did. Baku stood with a bigger Kenya and lost.
Right.
With Wadri actually. Kaseno Wadri, yes, and lost. So it's when he lost that he was appointed IGG.
But also he was for a long time serving as the movement secretariat, which was really a political thing.
All right.
And so,
of course.
But if he has the courage,
Edmond,
then the case will go on. But he can withdraw.
As a practicing advocate, I have no doubt in the independence of our judiciary, in the integrity of the men and women who sit on that bench.
Yeah.
But I do also recognize that people are skeptical about the judiciary outside. You've read reports, you've read people saying things about the judiciary, and I think that this is a chance for the judiciary to prove its independence.
To prove itself.
Right. And of course, if this was Tanzania, the Constitutional Court is above the Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court is above the Constitutional Court. If this was in Tanzania, it would be different. It would be the end.
Exactly.
That's very interesting.
Okay. Maybe before we go to, let's hear from the listeners. Maybe right now. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Our number 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. Spectrum, hello? Yes?
Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Yeah, my name is David from Bukoto. There is no implication from today's ruling whatsoever, because Professor Gilbert Bukenya didn't have any case to answer. Professor Gilbert Bukenya acted in the interest of the people of the Republic of Uganda, and this was entirely in good faith. In conclusion, the government of the Republic of Uganda at international level stood up and declared that program was a success, and it was. So if Professor Bukenya had done matter their age, because at one time the government was going to stand for the presidency, the program wouldn't have been a success. I thank you this evening.
Spectrum, hello?
Edmund, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Your name?
Jim is my name, and I'm a fanatic of Radio 1, the shows, and even at work. So, anyway, to the point. Thanks for the guest in the studio.
Welcome.
Talking about Bukenya's trial, I would just want to say one thing. There is the Honorable Ladislaus Rwakafuzi who said, even if we don't have the numbers in Parliament, let us gather information in terms of reports. It will be there for our sons and daughters or grandkids to debate in the same Parliament there. It will be. So that whether grandsons and sons of thieves can be convicted, it will be then. We are young men. I am about not 45 yet. I have savings which I'm also worried about because there's a change that is being mooted in the NSF. But one thing I'm sure about is that if there's a record somewhere, we shall recover what was looted.
Right. Okay.
Whoever is there will pay for it.
All right. Or his children will do it on his behalf. Maybe. Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes, your name?
I'm Walter.
Walter, go on.
Yeah. Now, I have a feeling President Museveni does not...
Can you switch off your radio, Walter?
Okay. President Museveni does not respect institutions. Even what's said about Bukenya, actually meant what Bukenya to go to jail, but we just feel like he's defending him or something. But bottom line is, he does not believe in institutions, and Bako will dance his tunes. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir, your name?
Shadrach is my name, Mugaura Shadrach. Yeah, well, if Bukenya has no case to answer, then let him face the court and prove that he has no case to answer.
Spectrum, hello?
Good evening.
Good evening, your name?
Champion Bukenya is my name. I would like to ask my lawyer by the name Mr. Rwakafuzi, that because you know that I have a case of renewal with the Constitutional Court. Should I put that maybe delaying to appoint those maybe just the people, I mean, people who must manage that court? It is maybe a way of delaying we people who have got in some cases maybe which government must answer.
Okay. Thank you. You made your point very clear. Spectrum,
Good evening, Spectrum. Dr. Tim Tokamba's my name. I salute you this evening. I want to assure you that President Museveni respects institutions. That's why he appoints judges. That's why these institutions are operating. In the past, we never had the IKIJUL. Some of these institutions weren't there. I think there's no problem. There's nothing like a trying the Honorable Kenya. His Excellency made a statement. But to show you that our courts are independent, nothing has ever taken place. The man is being tried. His word never sent anything. So no problem might be Baku.
All right. One final caller. Your name, sir?
Amen. Dungo Ahmed.
Your name?
Dungo Ahmed. How are you?
Very well, Ahmed.
Yeah, I think today I actually have more faith in the courts of law, and I feel very sorry for Dr. Bukenya because based on what I know from the media, it's almost official that the verdict may be imminent. So I feel very sorry for him, and I trust in the confidence and independence of the judiciary. Thank you.
All right. Although you didn't tell us the verdict according to your view, Mr. Rwakafuzi. Yes. You can respond to some of these callers, our callers tonight.
Yes, Dunga Ahmed. Was he Dunga Ahmed?
Ahmed Dung, yes.
Ahmed, yes. He says he has a faith in
more faith in
in our courts, and that the reading is on the wall that for Kenya that Kenya will be found guilty. I think that's what he seems to be saying. I don't think so. I don't think that's what the Constitutional Court was saying. The Constitutional Court only said that the criminal court should continue doing its work, and that Kenya should not hide behind the question of immunity. Immunity that is not given to him. There's no law giving the immunity to Kenya. So please, I still believe that Professor Kenya will still defend himself, and the courts will decide. My friend Church Ambrose, who is my client, once he says that the Constitutional Court should be reconstituted so that there is a quorum for his case to be heard. Well, I have no comment. We will leave it to the President. The President is the one supposed to do that. But like I've already said, the President does not respect institutions. There's nowhere in the world where you will find a court which is supposed to be constitutionally there, set up by a constitution, and it is not working. I mean, it does not make sense. We have a few judges who are there and they are earning a salary free of charge because they cannot act alone. So really, a person who respects institutions, and now I'm also answering Tom Mtokambali. I mean, Mtokambali, yes, who says Museveni respects institutions.
Right.
If he respected institutions, we would have a constitutional court, a Supreme Court, which is constituted.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Walter measured the same point as well. He doesn't think the president respects.
Well, let me just quickly respond to David from Bukoto. David says there's no implication. I think to say that this judgment is in vain is erroneous. There are serious legal and political implications arising from this decision, and then we have labored so much to explain that from the very beginning. The second response to David is that, look, David, I do understand the sentiments involved in this case, that the program was a success. But the questions I would ask you, is it in public interest? Is it in the interest of the people of Uganda that the very laws we set are flouted? I think not. Is it in public interest that money appropriated for particular functions are diverted without authority? I think not. So I think the question of acting in public interest, the question of acting in good faith, is a question that I think needs to be examined a little bit deeper, especially in fact, I mean, in light of the fact that we are now aware of the consequences of some of these decisions. We have, on Entebbe Road, solar panels that don't work. They are supposed to light up the city. Yeah. We have had potholes in this country, and we are told that
some people say the end justifies the means.
So
came and went.
We need to examine public interest in that light. Jimmy, an ardent fan of Radio 1, talks about and I agree with him. People who are holding power should not think that after power has been passed on to somebody else, if at all it does, that they want. I don't know about that, but there is a possibility. But the point is that even after office, posterity,
the chickens can come home to roast.
They will.
Criminal liability.
You don't want to answer.
There is no limitation on the offense of criminal liability. You can
except a few offenses like treason and I think libel,
sedition to the person of the president,
sedition is no longer.
And then Walter talks about there's respect for institutions. I think we need to discuss this again in light of these two issues, that you can have laws in this country, and this country has beautiful laws. The question is, do we respect those laws? Do we accord those institutions the necessary resources, the necessary freedom to operate and carry the mandate? I think in many instances in this country there is evidence to show that institutions have been sidestepped in favor of making political convenient decisions, and that's what we mean when we say there's a lack of respect for institutions. Lastly, I think Dr. Tom, he was very passionate about his issues, and of course you understand where he's coming from, and these arguments have been made before, where Ugandans have been reminded that you didn't have this under Amin, you didn't have this under Bote. But I think that in measuring our progress, in measuring our level of achievement, we should look at how far short we fall of the expected standard.
We should have some ideas.
Some ideas.
Not measure ourselves against Idi Amin.
Exactly, because you see, to compare Idi Amin and Museveni is to compare the uncomparable. These are two different people. Then lastly, Hamid talked about the question of having more faith in the judiciary, and you see, I can't agree with him anymore. I think that people are beginning to change their minds about the judiciary, and I think that it's still incumbent upon the judiciary. And if I say judiciary, by the way, I'm also a judicial officer, lawyers inclusive, and we must work very hard to instill public confidence in judicial processes, because that's why you have mob justice. People don't believe in the police, don't believe in the judiciary, so you get somebody who is suspected to have stolen, and then you just lynch him. So I think that we shall need to work hard, and then the judges can help us by delivering judgment that I think are free from bias.
Mr. Rwakafuzi, maybe as we close, the 1995 Constitution gives the President immunity from prosecution while still in office. Some people think this should not be there, that he's very powerful, so it should be impossible to receive a phone call in the morning.
It has been my argument.
It's a cancel your trip to wherever.
It's like this. That has been my argument. We either take away the immunity, then keep the term without term limits, or have back term limits and keep the immunity. You see, the problem is this. You see, it's like this. If a person is in power for 40 years, many offenses.
It gives us stability.
No, many offenses he will have committed earlier in those years. It's going to be very hard to find evidence.
You
see, but that's why our constitution originally in 1995. They said that the president should be immune from prosecution. Total immunity. But they also said he will be there for only 10 years.
After those 10 years he can be.
After those 10 years he can be prosecuted. But now you can't have two things. Total immunity and lack of term limits. It's a recipe for disaster, because a president can commit any form of offense for him to keep around. And It's very dangerous.
That also
Let me just conclude by a question. Do we have the rule of law in Uganda, or are we ruled by the law?
Go and explain that to us.
Because I do think that what we have are beautiful laws that in many instances do not reflect our actions, do not guide the making of decisions in government institutions.
Well, we have to end here. Rule of law or law of rule, rule of law or rule by law. Those are things we might not be able to go into now, or maybe even in the future. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in. Thank you, our dear guest, Mr. Ladislaus Rwakafuzi, Senior Human Rights Lawyer and Senior Partner with Rwakafuzi Company Advocates. Thank you very much indeed for coming to Spectrum.
It's a pleasure.
It's always an honor to have you.
It's a pleasure.
You've not been here for a long time.
For a long time, and I don't know why you don't invite me.
His office is just down the road here.
You used to be a regular. I believe you'll be able to come and invest this show, man. Give us much of your experience in the future. Mr. Ladislaus Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL, and commentator on political, social, and human rights issues. Thank you for coming to Spectrum tonight.
Thank you very much, Edmund, and I'm glad to have shared the platform with my senior land friend.
Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, not a land friend, Edmund Chizito. We'll be back tomorrow, but up next, the news in English.
Even back when I met George, I noticed something different about him. Maybe it was the way people looked up.